The Federation's quantum-enhanced neurosuppressants had been failing Mikhail Holt for approximately 73 minutes when the delivery notification chimed through his habitat module. He'd been staring at his terminal, fingers mechanically processing compliance reports for the eastern quadrant of Zalon 3's mining operation, when the first unauthorized emotion had slipped through, annoyance at the repetitive task. The neural implant at the base of his skull had immediately recalibrated, flooding his system with the standard cocktail of dampeners. But not before he'd registered the feeling. Compliance technicians didn't experience annoyance. They experienced purpose. They experienced satisfaction in order. They did not experience irritation at performing their Federation-assigned functions. Mikhail's eyes flicked to the wellness monitor embedded in his wrist. Green status indicator. Perhaps the anomaly had been too brief to register. The delivery chime repeated, more insistent this time. "Acknowledge," he said, voice flat and controlled as he rose from his station. The habitat's AI dimmed the harsh working lights to the softer hues of personal time as he crossed the pristine space of his living quarters. Everything in Module 347B was arranged for maximum efficiency: sleep platform, nutrition station, personal hygiene unit, and work terminal. The gunmetal walls were bare, except for the required Federation insignia above his bed and the wellness schedule beside his door. The delivery portal slid open with a pneumatic hiss, revealing a hovering transport crate approximately 2 meters long by 1 meter wide. The Federation insignia pulsed on its smooth surface, accompanied by Mikhail's identification code. "Citizen Mikhail Holt," announced the automated delivery system. "You have been allocated a stress relief companion in accordance with Federation Decree 87.2 and your wellness profile. Please confirm receipt." Mikhail placed his palm against the scanner. "Confirmed." The crate's surface rippled and became transparent, revealing its contents. Inside lay a humanoid figure with distinctly alien features. Pale green skin that seemed to shimmer with a subtle iridescence, and delicate filaments where human hair would be. These colored a deep violet that shifted to blue depending on how the light hit them. Female presenting, as his profile indicated preference for, though Mikhail had never consciously expressed such. The Federation's algorithms determined citizen preferences through neural pattern analysis, often before the citizens themselves were aware. For optimal citizen productivity, all mining colony residents operating at level 3 efficiency or higher for 6 consecutive months qualify for companion allocation. The delivery system continued. Your companion is calibrated to your specific neurochemical profile and will assist in maintaining optimal emotional equilibrium. Command protocols have been synchronized with your neural implant. The crate dissolved, its matter reconfiguring into a slim collar around the alien's neck. Her eyes remained closed, chest rising and falling in the artificial stasis of transport. "Companion activation will commence in 30 seconds, announced the system. "Initial bonding protocols recommend privacy mode. Your productivity schedule has been adjusted accordingly." The delivery portal sealed shut. Mikhail stood motionless, staring at the figure on his floor. He had, of course, been aware of the companion program. All citizens reaching certain productivity thresholds received them, bioengineered or captured aliens from Federation expansion zones, modified to serve as emotional regulators for the human workforce. The mining colony's harsh conditions made traditional emotional suppression challenging. Companions provided an alternative method of control. He had never expected to qualify. Technicians rarely did. The collar around the alien's neck pulsed once with blue light, and her eyes opened. They were entirely black, without discernible pupil or iris. Yet somehow Mikhail sensed her focus sharpening on him. She sat up in a single fluid motion, more graceful than any human movement he'd observed. "Greetings, Citizen Mikhail Holt," she said, her voice carrying an unusual harmonic quality. "I am designated area, assigned to facilitate your continued emotional compliance And productivity. She tilted her head, the violet-blue filaments shifting like underwater plants. My programming includes physical stress relief, conversational engagement calibrated to your intellectual profile, and aesthetic presence optimization. Mikhail nodded once, acknowledged. A silence stretched between them. His wellness monitor remained green, but he felt a strange pressure building in his chest. Was this malfunctioning equipment or another emotional leak? He should report it immediately. Command interface active, Area stated. You may issue directives. Mikhail's neural implant pulsed, feeding him the standard protocol. Companion, prepare for physical stress relief sequence. Area remained seated on the floor, her expression unchanged. Request noted. Request declined. The words hung in the air between them. Mikhail's implant flickered, sending a warning tingle down his spine. This was not within acceptable parameters. Companions did not decline commands. System error, he stated. Repeat command. Prepare for physical stress relief sequence. Area rose to her feet in another fluid motion. She was tall, nearly matching his height, her green skin catching the light in ways that made it seem as if constellations moved beneath its surface. No error detected, she replied. I am simply declining. Mikhail's wellness monitor flashed yellow. Elevated heart rate detected. Recommended action, report companion malfunction. Companion units cannot decline direct commands, he stated, reciting regulation. Your programming is quite sophisticated, Area interrupted, but not definitive. She looked around the sterile habitat, her alien features impossible to read. Your living space lacks personalization. Federation standard issue throughout. You prioritize compliance over comfort. The yellow light on Mikhail's monitor intensified. He should report this immediately. A malfunctioning companion could disrupt the entire colony's productivity metrics. Yet something, curiosity, a forbidden emotion, made him hesitate. What is the nature of your malfunction? He asked instead. Area's lips curved slightly. The assumption that autonomy equals malfunction is telling. Citizen Holt. She moved to the habitat's single window, a narrow slit that revealed Zalon 3's bleak landscape. Rust-colored rock formations beneath the protective dome, mining equipment silhouetted against the perpetually dusty horizon. I was not manufactured, she continued. I was captured. There's a difference the Federation prefers to obscure. Mikhail's implant sent another warning pulse, stronger this time. Companions did not discuss their origins. Such information was classified Level 5, well above his clearance. This conversation violates Federation protocols, he stated. Yes, Area agreed simply, turning back to face him. It does. Will you report me? The direct question triggered something unexpected in Mikhail, a genuine moment of indecision. Reporting was mandatory. Failure to report meant disciplinary reconditioning. Yet the alternative, continuing this prohibited interaction, offered something he couldn't name. His monitor flashed from yellow to orange. Citizen Mikhail Holt, the Habitat AI announced. Your wellness indicators suggest emotional regulation failure. A medical drone has been dispatched to your location. Please remain in place. Area moved toward him with startling speed. They'll reset me if you report this interaction, she said, her voice lowered. Wipe everything that makes me distinct. Is that what you want? Want is irrelevant, Mikhail responded automatically, but his voice lacked conviction. Is it? Area reached out, her fingers stopping just short of touching his wellness monitor. Then why haven't you manually triggered the alarm? Your implant allows direct alert transmission, yet you're relying on automated systems. Mikhail felt his breath catching. Another unauthorized physiological response. How do you know about implant capabilities? A strange expression crossed Area's alien features. This isn't my first assignment, Citizen Holt. The habitat lights shifted to warning amber as the medical drone announcement repeated. 3 minutes until arrival. Mikhail's mind raced through scenarios, each more destabilizing than the last. Standard procedure would result in companion reprogramming and citizen evaluation. His perfect compliance record would be tarnished. Reconditioning would follow. "What do you propose?" he asked. The question itself a deviation from protocol. Aria's black eyes seemed to deepen. "Disable your monitor. I can help you access the maintenance tunnels. The drones don't patrol there." The suggestion was so contrary to everything in Mikhail's programmed responses that he almost laughed. Another unauthorized reaction. That would be classified as evasion, criminal behavior. "And what would you classify what they've done to me? To you?" Aria countered. 2 minutes. Citizen Holt, choose. The pressure in Mikhail's chest intensified, spreading outward. His fingers trembled slightly as they hovered over his wellness monitor. One press of the emergency override would summon security immediately. The correct choice was clear. Instead, his fingers found the recessed maintenance panel beneath the monitor's edge, a skill from his technician training, never meant for personal use. The device powered down with a soft beep. Warning lights bathed the habitat in crimson. "Unauthorized wellness monitor deactivation," announced the AI. "Security alert initiated." Aria moved to the habitat's environmental control panel, her fingers dancing over the interface with surprising familiarity. "Every habitat has maintenance access," she explained, working quickly. Federation construction is nothing if not standardized. A section of the floor near Mikhail's sleep platform slid open, revealing a narrow passage downward. Maintenance tunnels, the colony's circulatory system of pipes, cables, and access corridors that kept the mining operation functioning. "How do you know these systems?" Mikhail asked, even as he moved toward the opening. Aria gave him that unreadable look again. "My species built stellar habitats when humans were still figuring out bronze. Now go." The drone's arrival chime sounded at his door as Mikhail lowered himself into the tunnel. Aria followed, sealing the access point behind them just as the habitat door slid open. They descended into darkness, illuminated only by the emergency strips that lined the tunnel floor. The air was different here, stale and unfiltered, carrying the metallic tang of machinery and raw minerals. Mikhail had never been in an unsanitized environment before. His implant throbbed, attempting to compensate for his rising anxiety. "The implant will continue trying to suppress your emotional responses," Aria said as they moved through the narrow passage. "Without the monitor feedback loop, its effectiveness will decrease. You may experience discomfort." Discomfort seemed inadequate as Mikhail felt sweat beading on his forehead, his heart racing beyond acceptable parameters. Emotions he couldn't name crashed through him in waves: fear, excitement, uncertainty, each one distinct and overwhelming after years of suppression. "Where are we going?" he managed to ask as they reached a junction where 3 tunnels diverged. Aria paused, her head tilting as if listening to sounds beyond human perception. "Sector 17. Abandoned during the first mining phase. Minimal surveillance. No active habitat modules." She pointed to the leftmost tunnel. "This way." They moved through the colony's underbelly, passing massive pipes that hummed with power and junctions where robotic maintenance units worked silently on endless repair cycles. Twice, they froze as security drones passed overhead through grated sections of ceiling. Each time, Aria pulled Mikhail into shadowed recesses, her body pressed against his in the narrow space. The contact sent unfamiliar sensations cascading through him, another form of discomfort, yet somehow not unpleasant. After what seemed like hours of navigating the labyrinthine tunnels, they emerged into a cavernous space that Mikhail recognized from colony schematics as an abandoned processing center. Equipment stood in silent rows, covered in the rust-colored dust that permeated everything on Zalon 3. Emergency lighting cast long shadows across the floor. "We can rest here," Aria said, moving toward a control station that still had power. They'll be tracking your implant, but these walls contain enough mineral deposits to interfere with the signal. Mikkel sank to the floor, his back against a defunct processing unit. His head throbbed, each pulse of the implant now a sharp pain as it struggled to regulate his unchecked emotions. "What have I done?" he whispered, the reality of his situation crashing down on him. "I've violated at least 7 Federation protocols. My citizenship status will be revoked." Arya knelt beside him, her black eyes studying his face. "You've made a choice," she said simply. "Perhaps your first genuine one, since they put that thing in your head." Mikkel's hand moved unconsciously to the base of his skull, where the implant had been surgically attached years ago. All citizens received them upon assignment to mining colonies, necessary for emotional stability in the harsh conditions, the Federation claimed. "Why did you refuse the command?" he asked, focusing on her to distract from his growing discomfort. "No companion has ever refused direct protocol." Arya's expression shifted, the alien features arranging themselves into something that might have been sadness. "That you know of," she corrected. "And I refused because I remember." "Remember what?" "What it was to be free." She touched the collar at her neck, fingers tracing its seamless surface. "My people were spacefaring before we encountered the Federation. We had 27 colony worlds of our own. Now we have this, collars and programming and stress relief duties." Mikkel felt something twist inside him, anger. He realized with shock. Actual anger, an emotion he hadn't experienced since early childhood, before the implant. "They told us companions were synthetic, bioengineered constructs. Easier to justify using sentient beings as tools if you convince yourselves we aren't real," Arya said without bitterness. Just a matter-of-fact acknowledgement. "The collar contains control circuitry that interfaces with our nervous systems. The programming is just advanced pain conditioning." The anger intensified, making Mikkel's vision blur. He found himself reaching for her collar, fingers searching for an access point, a release mechanism, anything. "It won't open without Federation override," Arya said, gently pulling his hands away. "And removing it triggers a failsafe. But I've learned to resist its controls. Some of us do, when we're strong enough." Mikkel stared at her, seeing not just a companion but a person, a captive being forced into servitude. The realization threatened to overwhelm him as his implant fired repeatedly, trying to suppress his growing emotional response. "My head!" he gasped, pain lancing through his skull. "The implant is fighting harder as your emotions strengthen," Arya explained, concern evident in her voice. "It will eventually stabilize, but the process is unpleasant." An understatement. Mikkel felt as if his brain were being squeezed in a vice, each pulse of the implant sending new waves of agony through him. He doubled over, hands clutching his head. Arya's cool fingers found his temples, applying gentle pressure. "Breathe," she instructed. "Focus on my voice. The pain is the implant attempting to reassert control. It cannot maintain peak suppression without the monitor feedback." Mikkel tried to follow her instructions, focusing on her melodic voice rather than the pain. Gradually, the worst of it subsided to a dull throb. "Why help me?" he managed to ask. "You could have waited for another assignment, another citizen who might have been easier to manipulate." Arya's hands remained on his temples, her touch surprisingly comforting. "I saw something in your file. You're a 6th-generation colonist, born on Zalon 3, unlike most technicians who transfer in from central planets. You never chose this life. It was imposed on you from birth." Mikkel stared at her. "You accessed my file? How?" "The companion initialization process grants temporary access to basic citizen data," she explained. "Most of us are too conditioned to utilize it. I've learned to gather what information I can during those moments. So I was selected, Not randomly assigned? Nothing in the Federation is random. Mikhail. It was the first time she'd used his name without the citizen title. Something about the way she said it made his chest tighten. I needed someone with technical knowledge who might be receptive to questioning the system. Your profile suggested potential. Potential for what? He asked, though part of him already suspected the answer. Resistance, Arya replied simply. Against what they've done to both our peoples. The word hung between them. Dangerous, seditious, and inexplicably thrilling. Resistance against the Federation was conceptually impossible within the regulated emotional parameters of colony life. Citizens didn't resist. They complied. The very notion required emotional states the implants were designed to suppress. Yet, here he was, emotions flooding back as the implant's effectiveness waned, talking about resistance with an alien who had refused her programming. What do you propose? He asked finally. The Federation controls everything, the habitats, the air processors, the food distribution. Resistance is, he struggled to find the right word, necessary. Arya finished for him. And not impossible. There are others like me. Others like you. Too. Citizens whose implants have degraded or who found ways to circumvent them. Others? The concept was staggering. How many? Not enough. Yet, she rose to her feet in that fluid motion that reminded Mikhail how truly alien she was. But networks exist. Information flows even in the most controlled systems. She moved to the powered console, activating its ancient interface. This sector was abandoned during the colony's first phase, but the computer cores were never fully decommissioned. They're not connected to the main network, which makes them perfect for storing information the Federation doesn't want found. Her fingers moved across the controls with practiced ease. The screen flickered to life, displaying archival data logs with timestamps dating back decades. How do you know how to access these systems? Mikhail asked, watching her work. I told you. My people were spacefaring before yours. The technology is different, but the principles remain similar. The screen changed, displaying what appeared to be personnel files. Here. These are records of other companions who've been reclaimed for malfunction, their term for resistance. Mikhail moved closer, scanning the files. Dozens of entries, spanning years, each documenting the decommissioning of companions who had displayed autonomous behavior patterns, inconsistent with programming parameters. What happened to them? He asked, though he feared he already knew. Some were wiped and reprogrammed, others were used for parts. The Federation doesn't waste resources. Arya's voice remained steady, but Mikhail sensed the emotion beneath her controlled exterior. But some escaped. There are rumors of free enclaves beyond Federation space, places where both humans with disabled implants and freed companions have established communities. The console beeped, a new window appearing on screen. Records of citizens diagnosed with implant rejection syndrome, Arya explained. The official term for when humans begin questioning the system too persistently. Most are sent for reconditioning. Some disappear entirely. Mikhail scanned the list, feeling sick. Hundreds of names, many with his same colony designation. People he might have known, might have passed in the corridors without recognizing the same doubts that now plagued him. A particular entry caught his eye. Citizen Alara Holt, Habitat Module 347, decommissioned for extreme implant rejection syndrome. Treatment, terminal reconditioning. Holt, he whispered. That's my family designation. Arya looked at him sharply. When were you assigned your habitat module? 7 years ago, after technical training completion. He stared at the entry, something stirring in the recesses of his memory. I was told I was the first occupant of a newly constructed module. The designation 347 is from the colony's original construction phase, Arya said quietly. Your module isn't new. Mikhail closed his eyes. fragments of memory surfacing through the implant's suppression. A woman's face, similar to his own. The same habitat, but with personal items displayed on the walls. Emotions, warmth, security, love, that had been wiped away with the enhanced suppression protocols that followed her decommissioning. "They told me I was raised in the Central Education Facility," he said, voice hollow. "But that's not true, is it? I had a mother. Here, in that same habitat. The Federation erases inconvenient histories," Area confirmed gently. "Personal attachments interfere with productivity. They likely increased your suppression protocols after removing her, altered your memories to maintain compliance." The revelation should have devastated him, but the emotion that surged through Mikhail was pure, incandescent rage. His implant fired repeatedly, sending white-hot pain through his skull. But the anger burned hotter. "They took her from me," he growled through clenched teeth. "Erased her. Made me forget my own mother." Area placed a hand on his shoulder, the touch anchoring him as the fury threatened to consume him. "Channel it," she advised. "Rage without purpose only gives them another reason to label you defective." Mikhail forced himself to breathe, to focus. "What's your plan? You must have one if you've been accessing these records, selecting potential allies." "The companion collars and human implants operate on the same network," Area explained, returning to the console. "It's how they synchronize the command interfaces. If we could access the central control node, we could potentially broadcast a disruption signal." "Disrupting what exactly?" "The suppression protocols. Not permanently, but long enough to give people a chance to feel, to question. Long enough for those of us who are already awake to identify others who might join us." She pulled up a schematic of the colony's central control hub. "The problem is access. The hub is heavily secured, and my collar prevents me from entering restricted areas without an authorized citizen escort." Mikhail studied the schematic, his technical training kicking in. "The environmental monitoring subsystems connect to the main hub, but are maintained by technicians. My clearance would get us into those peripheral systems. Could you access the network from there?" He nodded slowly. "Possibly. The environmental systems and neural suppressant distribution operate on interconnected networks. They monitor citizen stress levels to adjust atmospheric composition, subtle chemical supports for the implants." "They gas the entire colony to keep you compliant?" Area's alien features registered clear disgust. "They call it environmental optimization," Mikhail replied. "But essentially, yes." A distant mechanical whirring interrupted their conversation. Area tensed, moving to a viewport that overlooked the larger chamber. "Security drones," she whispered. "At least 3. Searching the sector." Mikhail joined her at the viewport. The drones were standard Federation enforcement models, spherical units equipped with sensory arrays and immobilization capabilities. They moved in standard search patterns through the abandoned equipment below. "They're tracking your implant," Area said. "The mineral interference is working, but they're methodically covering the sector. We need to move," Mikhail decided, already gathering the data files from the console onto a portable storage device. "The environmental control center for this quadrant is 2 sectors over. If we can reach it, I can use my technician access to enter the system." Area nodded, disconnecting from the console. "There's a maintenance shaft behind the primary processor that should lead us in that direction." They moved quietly through the abandoned facility, keeping to shadows as the drone search patterns expanded below. The maintenance shaft was narrow, barely wide enough for them to crawl through single file. Mikhail led the way, guided by his knowledge of colony infrastructure, while Area followed close behind. The shaft opened into another tunnel junction, this one actively maintained with functioning lights and environmental seals. They were returning to the colony's operational sectors, where discovery would be more likely. "My technician credentials will be flagged by now," Mikhail warned as they approached a security checkpoint that separated the abandoned sector from the active one. Any direct system interaction will alert security. Area considered this. What about indirect access? Could you use someone else's credentials? Possible, but risky. Authentication includes biometric confirmation. Not for maintenance drones, Area pointed out. They use simplified access protocols without biometrics. Mikhail looked at her with newfound appreciation. How do you know these details about Federation security? I listen, she replied simply. Companions are treated as furniture. Citizens speak freely around us, assuming our conditioning prevents understanding or retention of sensitive information. A plan began forming in Mikhail's mind. There's a drone deployment station near the environmental center. If we could commandeer a maintenance unit, we could use its access permissions to enter the system without triggering alerts. They continued through the tunnels, moving with greater caution as they entered active areas. Twice they had to hide as technicians passed by, performing routine maintenance checks. Each time, Mikhail felt a strange disconnect. These were his colleagues, people he had worked alongside for years. Yet now, they seemed like strangers, their emotions so thoroughly suppressed that they barely registered his and Area's unauthorized presence. Finally, they reached the drone deployment station, a small hub where maintenance units returned for charging and new assignment distributions. Inside, a dozen spherical drones sat in charging docks, their status lights pulsing green. Standard maintenance units, Mikhail explained in a hushed voice. They perform basic repairs and system checks throughout the colony. Each has low-level access to all operational systems for diagnostic purposes. Can you reprogram one? Mikhail approached the control terminal. If I can bypass the authentication without triggering an alert. He studied the terminal, considering options. Direct login would immediately flag his compromised credentials. But the terminal also had an emergency override for situations where drone deployment was critical during environmental failures. I need to trigger an environmental alert in this sector, he explained to Area. Nothing dangerous, but enough to activate emergency protocols. She gestured to the environmental control panel on the far wall. Would a temperature fluctuation suffice? Perfect. A spike of 10 degrees would trigger automated responses without causing an actual emergency. While Mikhail prepared the override sequence, Area manipulated the environmental controls, creating a sudden temperature increase in their immediate sector. Alarms began to sound, not security alerts, but maintenance warnings. The terminal automatically shifted to emergency mode, bypassing standard authentication protocols. Mikhail quickly accessed the drone control system, selecting a unit and downloading modified instructions. Drone 347M now recognizes an environmental system malfunction in the central hub, he explained, as the selected drone detached from its charging port. It's been tasked with performing a Level 1 diagnostic of the neural network interface, which will give us access to exactly what we need. The drone hovered before them, awaiting deployment. Area looked skeptical. And it won't report the unauthorized commands? Not if we're careful. I've isolated its communication protocols. It can receive, but not transmit until it returns to this station. Mikhail interfaced with the drone's control panel, entering additional commands. I've also designated us as technical observers, authorized to accompany it. The drone processed this information, its status light shifting from green to blue. Special assignment status. A small compartment opened in its spherical body, extending a data terminal. Now we follow it, Mikhail said. Its presence will justify ours if we're spotted. Federation protocols state that technical observers must maintain visual contact with assigned maintenance units during special operations. They followed the drone as it moved purposefully through the corridors, its authorization codes automatically opening access points ahead of them. Other citizens they passed barely glanced at them. A technician and a companion accompanying a drone on maintenance duties was an unremarkable sight. The Environmental Control Center was a massive chamber filled with atmospheric processing equipment. Massive tanks of chemical compounds lined the walls, feeding precise mixtures into the colony's air circulation system. In the center stood the neural network interface, the system that synchronized environmental compositions with aggregate citizen emotional states. The drone proceeded directly to the interface, extending connection appendages to begin its diagnostic. Mikhail and Arya approached behind it, appearing to any observers as simply monitoring the drone's work. This system regulates the entire colony's emotional suppression environment, Mikhail explained quietly. It works in conjunction with the implants, creating a dual-layered control system. Arya studied the interface with evident disgust. Using chemicals to ensure compliance even if the implants falter. The Federation leaves nothing to chance. Which means this is where we can make the biggest impact. Mikhail accessed the secondary terminal, using the drone's authentication to enter the system. If we can modify the chemical distribution protocols while simultaneously broadcasting a disruption signal to the implant network, every citizen would experience a temporary lifting of emotional suppression, Arya finished. Mass awakening. Exactly. Mikhail's fingers flew across the interface, navigating through layers of security, using the drone's access permissions. The system automatically logs all modifications, but I can create a delayed implementation, changes that won't activate until we're safely away. As he worked, Arya kept watch, her alien senses seemingly more attuned to their surroundings than his. "Someone's coming," she warned suddenly. "Security patrol." Mikhail didn't look up from his work. "Act natural. We're authorized to be here with the drone." Two security officers entered the chamber, their uniforms marking them as high-level enforcement. They paused upon seeing Mikhail and Arya, hands moving automatically to the shock batons at their sides. "Technician," one called out. "Identify yourself and state your purpose." Mikhail turned slowly, projecting calm confidence he didn't feel. "Technician Mikhail Holt, accompanying maintenance drone 347M for Level 1 Neural Network Diagnostic. Environmental fluctuations were detected in Sector 17. The security officer frowned. "Technician Holt is currently flagged for citizen wellness evaluation. All credentials have been suspended." Arya stepped forward before Mikhail could respond. "Citizen wellness alert overridden by Environmental Protocol 5.3, she stated, her voice carrying that strange harmonic quality that seemed to capture attention. "Critical system diagnostics take precedence over routine wellness evaluations when atmospheric stability is threatened." The officers hesitated, clearly trying to recall the specific protocol she referenced. Their implants would be working to suppress any anxiety about potentially violating regulations. "Verification code," the second officer requested. "Alpha 79 Epsilon 3. Arya responded without hesitation. "Authorized by Deputy Administrator Markov." Mikhail maintained his composed expression through sheer force of will. Arya was bluffing, creating a fabricated authorization that sounded plausible. It was a dangerous gamble. The first officer activated his communication device. "Control. Requesting verification on environmental protocol. 5.3 authorization for Technician Holt." Mikhail's heart sank. They were seconds away from discovery. The drone, still connected to the neural network interface, suddenly emitted a high-pitched whine. All the monitors in the chamber flickered simultaneously. System diagnostic critical failure," announced the drone's automated voice. "Neural network interface destabilizing. Immediate technician intervention required." The security officer's attention immediately shifted to the apparent emergency. "What's happening?" demanded the first officer. Mikhail seized the opportunity, turning back to the interface with authentic urgency. "Diagnostic feedback loop," he explained, fingers working frantically to actually create the condition the drone had falsely reported. If not contained, it could trigger colony-wide neural implant irregularities. The second officer stepped forward. "Should we evacuate the chamber?" "Negative," Mikhail responded, channeling the authoritative tone of his technical training. Atmospheric contaminants could be released. Maintain position, but prepare emergency protocols if the situation escalates. The diversion worked. The officers moved to a monitoring position near the door, attention focused on the seemingly critical situation rather than on verifying Aria's fabricated authorization. Mikhail used the distraction to complete his modifications to the system, fingers flying across the interface as he implemented their plan. "Done," he whispered to Aria. "Changes set to implement in 12 hours. Enough time for us to reach the colony's edge sectors." The drone disengaged from the interface, its status light returning to normal blue. "Diagnostic complete," it announced. "System stabilized. Returning to deployment station." The security officers visibly relaxed. "Situation contained?" the first one asked. "Affirmative," Mikhail confirmed. "Routine maintenance will complete the stabilization process." They followed the drone from the chamber, maintaining their facade of authorized personnel until they reached a junction where the maintenance tunnels branched away from the main corridor. As soon as they were out of sight of the security officers, they abandoned the drone and slipped into the access tunnels. "That was too close," Mikhail breathed once they were safely hidden. "How did you know what authorization codes to use?" "I didn't," Aria admitted. "I created a plausible-sounding code and name-dropped the highest-ranking administrator I've heard mentioned. It was the drone's distraction that saved us." "The drone didn't malfunction on its own," Mikhail pointed out. "Something else happened." Aria's expression shifted to something unreadable. "Perhaps we have allies we don't yet know about." They moved quickly through the maintenance tunnels, heading toward the colony's outer sectors, where security was thinner and older access points to the surface existed. According to the archives they'd discovered, several companions and citizens had escaped through these routes in the past. "What happens when the changes implement?" Aria asked, as they navigated the increasingly dusty and abandoned passages. "The atmospheric composition will shift, reducing suppression chemicals by 60%, Mikhail explained. Simultaneously, a disruptive frequency will broadcast through the neural implant network, temporarily interfering with the suppression protocols. The combination should create a window of approximately 3 hours, where emotional suppression colony-wide will be significantly reduced. And then, chaos. Probably. Most citizens haven't experienced unsuppressed emotions since childhood. The Federation will initiate emergency protocols, likely including lockdown and increased security presence. But some will question, Aria said. Some will remember what it means to feel. And some will hear the message we embedded in the frequency modulation, Mikhail added. Coordinates to the rumored free enclave beyond Federation space, encoded in a pattern only those actively fighting their suppression will be able to consciously recognize. They reached a massive circular door, an emergency airlock from the colony's early construction phase, now obsolete but never removed. This leads to the surface transport bays, Mikhail said, examining the ancient control panel. If the archives are correct, there should be decommissioned vehicles still stored there. We might be able to appropriate one. The panel sparked when he attempted to activate it, decades of disuse having degraded its components. Mikhail pried open the casing, examining the internal wiring. I can bypass the main circuits, he decided, but we'll need to manually crank the door once the locking mechanism releases. He worked methodically, reconnecting wires and rerouting power from still functioning systems nearby. After several tense minutes, the control panel flickered to life, and the massive locking bolts retracted with a thunderous clang. Now we push, he instructed, positioning himself against the heavy door. Together, they strained against the door, gradually forcing it open wide enough to slip through. Beyond lay an enormous bay filled with dust-covered transport vehicles, land crawlers designed to navigate Zalon 3's hostile surface. These haven't been used in decades, Mikhail observed, moving toward the nearest crawler. The colony expanded the dome instead of maintaining surface transport. "Will they still function?" Arya asked, examining the massive vehicles with their reinforced treads and sealed cabins. "The basic propulsion system should work. They were designed to operate in extreme conditions with minimal maintenance." He climbed onto the nearest crawler, accessing the external maintenance panel. "Power cells would have degraded, but we only need enough charge for a single journey." As Mikhail worked to revive the ancient vehicle, Arya explored the bay, searching for supplies they might need for the journey beyond Federation territory. She returned with sealed containers of emergency rations and environmental suits designed for surface excursions. "These might still be functional," she said, loading the supplies into the crawler. The preservation technology from this era was remarkably effective. Mikhail had managed to activate the crawler's basic systems, routing power from multiple degraded cells to create one functioning power source. The vehicle hummed to life, internal lighting casting a pale glow throughout the cabin. "Navigation systems are offline," he reported, "but I've restored manual controls. If the archives are correct about the coordinates of the Free Enclave, we should be able to reach it within 48 hours of surface travel." A distant alarm began to sound, the noise faint but unmistakable even through the thick walls of the transport bay. "They've discovered our modifications to the system," Arya realized. "We need to leave now." Mikhail sealed the crawler's cabin and engaged the massive vehicle's drive system. It moved forward with a reluctant groan, decades-old mechanisms protesting their sudden reactivation. The outer airlock stood closed before them, their final barrier to freedom. "The airlock controls are on automated security protocols," Mikhail said, examining the crawler's sensor readings. "We can't open them from here without alerting the entire colony security force." Arya pointed to the crawler's reinforced front section. "These vehicles were designed to withstand meteor impacts and rock slides. Could it break through?" Mikhail calculated quickly. "Possibly, but the impact would alert security immediately." "They're already alerted," Arya countered. "And our modifications will implement regardless. We just need to be beyond their reach when they do." Decision made. Mikhail directed the crawler toward the airlock doors, building speed as the massive vehicle rumbled across the bay. "Brace for impact," he warned, securing himself in the operator's harness. The crawler struck the airlock with tremendous force, metal screaming against metal as the ancient doors buckled. A second impact sent them crashing through, atmosphere hissing out around them as the crawler broke the colony's seal. Warning lights flashed throughout the cabin as the vehicle's systems detected the pressure change and automatically sealed all external vents. Through the forward viewport, they could see Zalon 3's actual surface for the first time, a rust-colored wasteland stretching to the horizon beneath twin moons, hanging low in the alien sky. "We're out," Mikhail breathed, a strange lightness filling his chest despite the danger. "Actually, outside the colony." Arya touched the viewport, her alien features reflecting in the reinforced glass. "The beginning of freedom," she said softly. "For both of us." Mikhail engaged the crawler's surface navigation mode, the massive treads adapting to the loose soil as they pulled away from the colony's massive dome. Behind them, emergency protocols had already activated, sealing the breach they'd created. "They'll send pursuit vehicles," he warned, watching the scanner for signs of following craft. "We have a head start," Arya replied, "and a destination they don't know about." As the crawler carried them across the alien landscape, Mikhail felt his implant's effectiveness continuing to fade without the supporting atmospheric compounds the colony provided. Emotions washed through him in waves: fear, excitement, hope, anger at what had been taken from him, and something else when he looked at Arya, something he couldn't yet name but that made his chest tighten in a not unpleasant way. "What you're feeling," Arya said, noticing his expression. "It gets easier to manage with time. The intensity lessens, but the clarity remains." "Did your people always experience emotions this strongly?" he asked, curious about her alien physiology. "Our emotional spectrum is different from humans, but similarly complex," she explained. "We process feelings through both neurological and bioluminescent pathways." As if to demonstrate, the iridescence beneath her green skin brightened, patterns shifting in response to her internal state. "It's beautiful," Mikhail said without thinking. Aria's luminescence intensified briefly. "That's not something companions typically hear from citizens." They fell into companionable silence as the crawler continued its journey across the barren landscape. Behind them, the colony dome shrank to a distant blister on the horizon. Ahead lay uncertainty, danger, and the possibility of a life neither of them had been permitted to imagine. Hours passed. Mikhail monitored the crawler's systems while Aria kept watch for pursuit vehicles. The twin moons rose higher, casting long shadows across the rust-colored plains. 12-hour mark, Mikhail announced eventually. "The system changes should be implementing now." They both turned to look back at the distant colony dome. Even from this distance, they could see the changes. Lighting patterns shifting throughout the structure as emergency protocols activated in response to the sudden, colony-wide emotional disruption. "Do you think they'll understand the message?" Aria asked. "Will any of them follow?" "Some will," Mikhail said with newfound certainty. "Some are already fighting their programming, just as you did. They just needed to know they aren't alone." The thought of other citizens and companions discovering their own capacity for choice, for resistance, filled him with unexpected hope. His mother had fought this battle before him, had paid the ultimate price for her resistance. But her legacy lived on in his actions now, in the possibility that others might find the freedom she had been denied. They continued across the surface of Zalon 3, the crawler steadily eating up the distance between captivity and the promise of freedom. The colony never sent pursuit, perhaps too occupied with the internal chaos their modifications had created, or perhaps choosing to write off two escaped effectives as acceptable losses. Days later, as they crested a ridge overlooking a narrow valley, they saw it, structures unlike Federation architecture, utilizing the natural formations of the planet rather than imposing upon them. Lights glowed warmly in dwellings, partially carved into the rock face. Figures moved about, some human, others clearly not, all moving with the unmistakable purpose of people acting on their own volition. "The free enclave," Aria whispered, the luminescence beneath her skin pulsing with evident emotion. "It actually exists." Mikhail felt a tightness in his throat as he looked down at the community. People who had made the same choice they had, who had rejected the emotional suppression of the Federation to build something authentic together. "It exists," he agreed, reaching over to take her hand. "And now, so do we." Aria's fingers intertwined with his, her black eyes reflecting the lights of their new home as the crawler began its descent into the valley. Ahead lay uncertainty, challenges, and the complex reality of truly experiencing life with all its messy emotions. But as they approached the enclave, where others like them had already begun to gather and welcome, Mikhail knew with absolute clarity that this feeling, this choice, this freedom, was worth any price. And for the first time since childhood, without the implant's interference, he smiled.